Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. And, of course, another Dame Frevisse medieval mystery, and today we are doing The Bastard's Tale. This is, of course, being what it is. Bastard means male child born out of wedlock, as opposed to, you unbelievable jerk. So the titular bastard is the son of the Duke of Gloucester, and the one thing about Gloucester is that throughout this whole series, and I haven't mentioned this because, frankly, I've been more interested in Frevisse's stuff than background politics, is that Frevisse's cousin Alice married the Duke of Suffolk, and Suffolk and Gloucester have been political rivals. Suffolk, after much labor, managed to basically drive Gloucester out of power and has been doing various things since that Gloucester wholly objects to. However, Gloucester was hamstrung in some ways because, among other things, his wife, whom he loved dearly, was being held basically against his good behavior. And at the start of this book, he is sent a letter ostensibly by the king that effectively implies to him that he'll be able to get his wife back, that if he, does the right thing or shows up or what have you, that the king will release Eleanor, his wife. And the thing is, this isn't told from Gloucester's perspective, it's told from his bastard son's perspective. Now, he has not acknowledged his son sort of to get him legitimated as, as a legitimate heir or anything. But he very clearly, as the book goes on, loves his son, and indeed, when he is killed, one of the things that happens is that he tells his son that he's sorry that he didn't go to the king sooner, that he didn't try to get Artes legitimated. And it's, and so there's a very, very strong bond of child-parent love between the two of them. Anyway, so the thing is that they go to where the king is. Again, they've been invited, and when they get there, or Artes and several of Gloucester's men go on ahead, and when they get there, they find out that Suffolk has been up to things. Among other things, he's been spreading rumors that Gloucester's going to arrive with 3,000 men, an army at his back, to commit treason against the king. And of course he's not. He has no intention. They've talked him down from around 100 men to 80. And 80 men in a city full of everyone else's armed men really isn't remotely like an army, when everyone else also has 80 men apiece and everyone else can combine together to crush you. So, there's absolutely no ill intent there. But Suffolk is spreading rumors. And throughout this book, let us make the transition to Frevisse's perspective. She was brought there because Bishop Beaufort, who is the bishop who was best friends with her uncle Thomas, the bishop who has several times used Frevisse to his own temporal ends. Now, there are always ends that are ostensibly for the good of England, but Frevisse frequently resents his making use of her precisely because every time he makes use of her, she feels like his reasons for doing it are less than noble, that they're not about truth or justice or church anything. They're about him making some political chess move, and she really, really resents being used, having her talent for solving crimes, her perspicacity, her intellect being used for, temporal chess games. And so Frevisse arrives because of the machinations of Bishop Beaufort, who is it later turns out that he is dying. He's aware he's dying, and he's sort of doing a last gasp at trying to, like, stave off the, horrific failures in the country. And Joliffe, the player who we all know and have developed an affection for over time, is in town, among other things, to act as Beaufort's spy, to connect with Frevisse, to ask her to do things that Beaufort wanted her to do. And Frevisse is put in the unfortunate position of having to do what Bishop Beaufort asks, because she is a nun, she is in the church, she has sworn a vow of obedience, and he is a bishop, and thus her superior in the church, and thus she must be obedient. This is part of being a nun. It's part of the job. But she doesn't like it. And so she's caught there, and then she's caught with the fact that Joliffe is asking her to do things, and he's there on Bishop Beaufort's behalf, but at the same time, Artice is the bastard, the titular bastard, and Joliffe is clearly acting in his defense to protect him. And so when he asks Frevisse to do things, some of that is Beaufort, and some of that is him asking her favors on behalf of a young man that he likes and is hoping to help. And so she gets caught betwixt and between on that, and then her cousin, Alice, asks her also to spy, because Alice wants to know what her husband is doing. As Alice says throughout the course of this book, her husband used to speak to her. She and her husband used to do these things together. They would plan together. But her husband has stopped asking her, has stopped including her, has started patting her on the head and saying, there, dear, it's fine, I've got it all under control. And Alice is a smart woman. She is a politician's wife, but she is clever and uses her wits and her skills to help her husband and to do these various political things that he wants to do, but she's becoming more and more concerned as it becomes more and more clear to her that her husband is doing things that are horrifically wrong. And to an extent, when it's very, very obvious that, for example, that Suffolk had hired somebody to murder Gloucester, and that's bad enough. But what's really interesting are these moments where you have this medieval Christian perspective, or perhaps a Christian perspective, generally, where when you're talking about such a heavily, deeply Christian and believing Christian society, that when Suffolk starts to hope that Gloucester will die without waking up, the important thing there is that one of the fundamental Catholic rights is Catholic rights, and by rights I mean rights, traditions, actions, however you want to describe them, is the last rites, that is the opportunity to be shriven, to confess your sins, to be absolved of your sins, so that when you die you effectively don't have any stain besmirching your soul at the time of death, thus making it possible for you to pass into heaven without spending time in purgatory, or at least minimal time in purgatory, as opposed to somebody who dies without being able to confess their sins and thus is going to either go to purgatory or to hell because they haven't been able to be shriven. They haven't been able to confess and unburden themselves and release those sins to God, and however that metaphysically works in the Catholic Church, I wouldn't know. I'm not a Catholic. But to wish that somebody would die quietly without ever waking up, without having a chance to confess his sins, is, if you put yourself into that mindset, into that place, it's a horrifying thing to wish on somebody. And Alice watches as her husband keeps on regretting that this person didn't just die quietly or die faster, that he keeps on saying these things and being worse and worse, and she doesn't know what to do because she is a woman in a world where you can't get a divorce. She's a woman in a world where women have limited power, and where her husband is an extremely powerful man, and she doesn't know what to do about this. And in the end, after various things happen, including that people get threatened, and Gloucester does wind up dying without ever waking up because somebody tried to smother him in his sleep, and he woke up after, and it did enough that he never actually woke up after that. But she winds up sending Frevisse away to protect her cousin, and then calling Frevisse back for... And I'm just going to spoil this because it's such a remarkably significant thing. Because Frevisse has lied before for people, on people's behalf, to protect people. In The Outlaw's Tale, there is a young man, a boy really, he's in his mid-teens, and he wound up murdering somebody who was effectively threatening his aunt and trying to abuse them, and so Frevisse and the boy's mother both lie through their teeth and say that the boy's father, who was already dead, had been murdered by somebody else, to say that he had killed the man who had been murdered, because this 15-year-old, 16-year-old boy doesn't deserve to lose his life over a moment of temper acting to protect somebody who is being threatened. And that they want to give him the opportunity to do that, and if you just lie and say that the father did it, then this kid has a second chance, because it's clear that, he didn't plan murder, he didn't intend to kill, and was shocked and horrified by the fact that he had killed. But in this case, Frevisse gets asked to lie, to ruin her reputation as a nun, to ruin her good name, to do all kinds of things, in order to effectively threaten and bludgeon Suffolk into pardoning 5 men, including Artice, the, again, titular bastard of this book, that he's basically sentenced them to be hung and then drawn and quartered, to be executed in the worst and most public, horrifying way possible as traitors, which was something none of them had done, and it's horrifying. And there's this wonderful section of the book about Artice's perspective in those, what he thinks are going to be the final moments of his life, as he walks to his execution, and it's just so gut-wrenching. Especially because, of course, he's innocent of these crimes, and he's 20. But Frevisse is willing to go to Suffolk and get on her knees and tell him, look him dead in the eye and say that she has Gloucester's will because she had an affair and is actually Artice's mother. She is willing to lie and claim this, something that will, if it gets out, ruin her reputation, something that will make her out to be a nun who violated her vows in an incredibly blatant way. And she doesn't care, and she will do this gladly to save a life. And so many times she agonizes over sins that she commits, over things she feels she has to confess, and in this one book, in this one time, there isn't a moment of regret or of doubt or of anything else when she does it, and it is so remarkable. Really, really meaningful, and a fantastic closer on it, and I'm basically out of time on this, so I'm just going to say this one is this is a great one, this book. in my opinion anyways. So that's everything, and I'll see you all next week.